What's going on, world? This is G. Dot of MMAJones.com. The site is down right now. I apologize for that. It will be up and running shortly. It's down for some renovations, some advertising spots I'm putting up, and things like that. But anyways, I wanted to go ahead and discuss UFC 200, Conor McGregor, and Nate Diaz, and what the hell is going on. Now, I don't have any exclusive information outside of what you're able to get through the usual sources who are the closest to the fighters. All right. But I kind of wanted to just weigh in on what I think is going on and kind of my assessment, and maybe you feel me, maybe you don't, just to kind of get the conversation going. But I don't know how many of y'all read Conor's kind of long thread on Facebook talking about the promotion and the PR work was getting in the way of his training. Now, Conor mentioned it, he just came off of a loss. He wants to train right this time. He's not facing a 145er. Nate Diaz is a real legit motherfucking threat, and Conor McGregor doesn't want to get embarrassed like he did last time. And it's not that Conor McGregor didn't show up to fight last time, because the first round pretty much he was putting the beats on Nate. But on the ground, Conor McGregor is fish out of water. And he does, even though it takes more than a couple of weeks to learn Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and put together a decent ground game, or at least put together enough of a defense to not end up on the ground, he wants to get as much training as possible. Now, this is the big question mark for me, because, Dana White was like, well, he doesn't want to come out to do the fucking promos, and we're spending big money, and he doesn't want to do the commercials, and he doesn't want to do any marketing. So that's why I pulled him from the card. And, Dana White, I will give him props for acting like it's nothing wrong here. Now, we all know that Conor McGregor is the biggest draw in the UFC right now, outside of maybe Ronda, but I would argue that Conor is bigger because he's literally put a whole country on his back. He's bringing a whole country's market with him. But, Dana White acts like, oh, it's no big deal. You know what I'm saying? Well, of course he's going to act like that. Of course he's supposed to act like that because he's the face of the company. But inside, he's fucking dying. And he knows that if Conor is not on 200 and specifically fighting Nate Diaz, it would still do high buys if he would be fighting a 145er, say a Frankie Edgar. It would still do great numbers, but a lot of us want to see that rematch because we want to see, I know me personally, I want to see Conor McGregor and Nate Diaz with full training camps behind them, preparing for each other specifically. Now, I know Nate Diaz says he just trains to kill and shit, and that's part of the Diaz persona is, they don't give a fuck. But I want to see Nate Diaz also, because Nate Diaz said he wouldn't have got touched if he had a full camp. So, you know what I'm saying? They both talked a lot of shit about if they would have had a full camp. So, you know what I'm saying? I'm one of the guys who want to see them with a full camp. When Conor McGregor, there's a couple points that I feel him on and a couple points that I don't. The points that I feel him on, one is, I don't necessarily give that much of a fuck for all this promo work. Yes, I know it does sell the fight. Yes, I know, Conor's shit talk is entertaining, but you got to think, how much shit can Conor really talk this time around at these pressers when he got choked out and he tapped like relatively fast. Not taking anything away from Conor's fighting ability. Obviously, you know what I'm saying, he's there for a reason. He's in the UFC for a reason. But in that same night, Holly Holm did not tap, and she got choked out. Conor McGregor tapped quick as a motherfucker. Matter of fact, in my opinion, he shot on Nate to end up on the ground so that he wouldn't get knocked out, and he would just tap, and that would be it. It was kind of like looking for a way out. And Nate Diaz knew this, but I'd rather him prepare, and I'd rather see the best fully trained, fully prepared Conor McGregor go in there against Nate Diaz rather than him sitting at these fucking pressers talking shit, knowing that there's only so much shit he can talk because he did get choked out. Point number two that wasn't addressed in the thread by Conor McGregor is, I'd like to know how much of how do I say this? How far in advance was Conor McGregor notified about this specific tour? Because if this was disclosed at the time of the signing of the contract, then some of the brunt of this PR fuck up is on his shoulders. You know what I'm saying? Like, if he knew that this world tour was coming up and all of a sudden he changed his mind or something, well, you should have made those terms known at the signing of the contract. Like, look, I'll fight at 200, but I don't want to do all this fucking world tour and everything like I did with Otto. Even though I don't think it was that. I don't think it was going to be that. I think it was like 3 or 4 cities or some shit. But if that was going to be the case from the jump, then, you know what I'm saying, I would understand. If this wasn't announced at the contract signing and Dana White just surprisingly said, you know what, let's get it would be a great idea, the marketing team, like, let's get everything together and let's have a little mini world tour and let's have these commercials and all this shit. And he just called Conor up like, yo, get to Vegas. Like Conor's an employee or something. Then I understand Conor McGregor feeling rubbed the wrong way. Like, hold on, man. It's bad enough I got to wear this ugly Reebok shit, and all this other stuff. And I bailed you out when motherfuckers have pulled out. These Brazilians keep pulling out, and I still show up. I still fight. And all of a sudden you call me talking about we got to shoot a commercial and I'm in the middle of training. Nah. Let me go ahead and flex a little bit of muscle and, get ESPN talking about it and get the world talking about it. Which, if that was his aim, then great. That's the big question mark. Was this announced at... Maybe y'all out there know. I certainly don't. Maybe this presser and all this marketing shit was announced at the contract signing. Maybe it wasn't. That's kind of a big question mark for me because that'll determine who was really in the wrong. Another thing is when Conor talks about that he did bail Dana White out twice for Brazilians pulling out, and he's not given the least bit of leeway. Like, Conor McGregor does a lot of press. You know what I'm saying? Like, all UFC fighters do, but in particular, Conor McGregor gets put in front of the camera a lot because he can talk. You know what I'm saying? He's got mic skills. So naturally, he's able to not only sell himself, he's able to sell the brand. He's able to sell UFC, especially pulling in some of those WWE fans who really eat that shit up. For those of us who've been watching MMA for the longest time or in the MMA world, been watching UFC since the day before forever, we know that the shit talk and everything, like, it's just a little bit of an added ingredient. Because at the end of the day, motherfuckers still got to get in that octagon and get busy. And now none of that talking means shit. Unless you're the Diaz brothers, obviously, because they're going to be talking to you while they're whooping that ass. But, it's a side thing. It's not the main course. But, they get Conor McGregor to do as much press as possible because they're trying to milk all of that, the emotional draw, because it means dollar signs. So when Conor McGregor says, let the other monkeys dance, I kind of feel him on that. Like, look, man, I've made this much money for the company. Of course I've gotten paid and I'm not complaining, but, Nate Diaz can talk a little bit of shit too. Especially if he wants to talk about he's the king and he's this and he's that and, he should be the draw and he's the motherfucking show. Well, let him, get his draw game up a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Let him draw the crowd. Let him get some face time. Let him call me out a little bit. And the thing about Nate Diaz talks hellified shit. Both Diaz boys talk hellified shit. But it's not really the same as Conor McGregor. Like, Conor McGregor's shit talk is like real cerebral. Like, when he was talking shit about Jose Aldo, I mean, he was throwing it back to motherfucking medieval times on him, talking about, I would ride through your village on horseback and slay every man, woman, and child who was not fit to work. Like, that's some old, that's reaching. You know what I'm saying? And it's entertaining shit. It's funny shit. You know, Nate Diaz shit talk is more like some American West Coast gangster shit. Like, you know what I'm saying? Fuck you, fuck what you're talking about. My crew will smash yours. You know, it's kind of like the Mexican NWA type shit. That's what the Diaz boys are on. You know what I'm saying? Which Americans have heard a million motherfucking times, but it still sells. Back a couple years ago, Dana White said Nate Diaz is not a needle mover. I beg to differ, especially these days. But it's not the same. It's two different brackets of entertainment. Another thing that was addressed in this long thread was, well, it's kind of been addressed in combat sports media and in sports media period, ESPN and everything, is Conor McGregor and the UFC playing a tug of war, jockeying for position. Now, this is where things get funny because the UFC has always made it a point to make sure the brand stays above the fighter, meaning no star. That's why you don't really see them push, except for maybe a few. The fighters who they feel are bleeding UFC, meaning they're super loyal and they are forever attached, forever married to the brand of the UFC. That's the ones who they give a push to. Ronda Rousey comes to mind. Ronda Rousey and UFC are synonymous. They are inseparable. Ronda Rousey has never tried to make herself, even with movie offers and shit and Sports Illustrated or whatever. She's always, even to like the casual pop culture fan, Ronda Rousey is that blonde chick that fights in the UFC. That's how they probably talk about it. You know what I'm saying? But the UFC really doesn't put the marketing machine behind motherfucking individual fighters. They put their marketing money behind the UFC. But Conor McGregor has kind of rose ranks fast as fuck because he's able to speak and he has mic skills. But it's kind of a situation where Conor McGregor sees that he's not going to want to be synonymous all the time with UFC going in the future, because the UFC as a business is pretty fucking cutthroat. So, you saw how they kind of bullied him into doing The Ultimate Fighter, and they're pretty tough guys. You know what I'm saying? Like the UFC, they're pretty shrewd business people. I mean, Lorenzo's not a billionaire on accident, but it's kind of a situation where they're having and Conor McGregor made a good move on his part, from his camp's perspective, made a good move by making this go public. Because when you make it go public, the corporation, the company, is always going to be the bad guy. Because none of those guys go in there and fight. Lorenzo, Dana White, they can get as muscly as they want to. They can pump as much iron as they want. They can get big as they want. They're not getting in that motherfucking octagon. You know what I'm saying? That's not what they're there for. But, so they're always the bad guys. And they're all, and plus they put them in this Reebok shit and took away their sponsors. I mean, they've kind of made themselves out to be the enemy to an extent. Even though I respect them. I'm not a UFC basher, but I'm saying that's how the public is going to perceive it. So Conor McGregor takes it public by going public, and not just that, like just tweeting and then stepping back for a little bit. He pulled a power move with the UFC that they're not going to be able to Because put it like this. If UFC doesn't get Conor McGregor on UFC 200, to me, in my opinion, and of course I'm still going to watch UFC 200, but it's a failure from the outset. If it's not, especially, even if it could be Nate Diaz and whoever they decide, you know what I'm saying? Even if it's GSP, even if GSP comes back. I mean, to be honest, and even with GSP coming back, it's not that many people are really giving a fuck. Like, the window for GSP coming back for people to really give a damn, I believe is almost closed. It's been closing rapidly. You know what I'm saying? He tried to keep his name in the headlines and shit by having his manager out there and his trainer and his head coach out there talking about, is GSP coming back? Well, he's in the gym. Well, he's sparring. Well, we've been hearing he's sparring for years now. If he's not sparring to get in there and put in work, then who gives a fuck? So there's that. But UFC 200 will be a failure if it's not Diaz McGregor too. And the UFC knows that. They're not stupid. So they can try to play tough with Conor McGregor all they want to. And besides that, the UFC loses anyways, because if they give it, they lose either way. This is a lose-lose for the UFC. Don't have Conor McGregor on the card with facing Diaz in fight number 2. They lose. They lose millions of dollars. If they say, okay, Conor, we'll only demand of you that you do the New York presser. Well, the UFC just took a loss, and a public loss at that, because now a whole bunch of fighters are going to be like, hold on, man. First of all, a whole bunch of fighters are going to try to, start practicing their mic skills game in the mirror. But they're going to be like, oh, okay, all right, so Conor McGregor doesn't have to show up for these pressers either. Okay, well, guess what, Dana? I don't like this Reebok shit, by the way. And discipline is going to start falling apart, and it might even result in a fucking fighters union, which a lot of people have been screaming for a while. Bellator might start picking off some of the roster, you know what I'm saying? You never know. But, it might have taken a guy like Conor McGregor to kind of make the UFC humble a little bit, but, that remains to be seen. To be honest, like I said, I'm not a UFC hater. I don't bash Dana White and shit. Like, they've helped the sport evolve. So they've done a great service to the sport of mixed martial arts. But they are not bigger than the sport. They helped evolve the sport. Granted, they've helped bring corporate money into it, which is kind of a good, bad thing, because Reebok sucks, in my opinion. But, they've helped garner corporate attention. I made it more household, made it more soccer mom, which is cool, because it's going to attract new talent. You know what I'm saying? Like, new generations of UFC fighters are just going to keep on getting better and better. And the entertainment value in the product is going to improve. And it already has. But you're not bigger than the sport itself. You're not bigger than mixed martial arts. Mixed martial arts has been around since man was able to throw a punch at another man. You're not bigger than that. You know what I'm saying? So all the money and the octagon and the lights and the Red Hot Chili Peppers showing up ringside and the celebrities and the big fuss and all of that, it's still not bigger than the sport of MMA. And maybe it took Conor McGregor to be able to do that. So I kind of feel both sides, to be honest. Like, there's a lot of people that side with Conor McGregor. There's a lot of people that side with the UFC. I'm just a guy who feels both sides of it, and we'll see what happens. But I can tell you what, as a fan, I don't want for the fight, for the rematch of Diaz versus Conor McGregor to not be on the UFC 200 card. So if for the UFC to make that happen and not disappoint the fans, they are going to have to swallow their pride this time. Period. So I know this is kind of a lengthy video, but what do y'all think? Who are y'all leaning more towards? The UFC or Conor McGregor? Or you kind of like me, you feel both sides of it and you're just waiting. You just want to see the motherfucking rematch. Let me know what you think. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. MMAJones.com will be back up soon, so stay tuned.